folks, how is everyone doing? I'm currently along the New York State Thruway on my way to Skidmore College and unable to be live for the pregame show, but that won't stop me from making my predictions for the Sabres tonight. I think this team's going to bounce back from the little embarrassing stint up in Seattle. Calling it 4-3 Sabres win. Book it now.
Folks, welcome back. It is a Sabres game night. The Sabres are back home after a West Coast trip to host the Canadiens. They'll be a favorite, but are they our favorite to get the job done? Gatesy obviously thinks so, but he's on the road. I'm joined by intern Vinnie. Vinnie, welcome. I hate to say it, but you kind of had a prediction right for Tuesday night. You knew what was going to happen in Seattle.
Yeah, I don't want to give myself too much credit. It wasn't that I knew that was going to happen, and I don't mean to just fade the Sabres all the time. I think in that specific scenario, they were in a bit of a tough spot, and I think, all good things must come to an end, and their little run of being on a hot streak had to come to an end eventually, and it's a shame it came to an end the way that it did, in a fashion where they looked like they forgot how to play NHL hockey. But with that said, there's another game again tonight and a chance for them to forget that and move forward.
And, I have learned my lesson. 5 years ago, I may have said, this is a must-win for the Buffalo Sabres. There's no such thing technically as a must-win in October, November, and December. But, Vinny, if this team is going to make the playoffs ultimately, without sounding too severe, this is a game where you got to get 2 points, plain and simple, especially pointing out the number now as a minus 195 favorite.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Now, this is certainly a spot where you could be vulnerable. We mentioned it, or not we mentioned it, but it was mentioned by a couple of people on Twitter today, and even on the Sabres pregame show, Paul Hamilton mentioned the fact that your long road trip, sometimes the worst part about a long West Coast road trip, it's not the road trip itself, it's coming back and then playing soon after that road trip ends. So with that said, they could be a tough spot, but yeah, you really want to bounce back against a Montreal team that has been interesting so far in this young NHL season.
And you're absolutely right. That's definitely a storyline that I think a typical NHL team would fall into. If you're going to have one thing working in your favor, one of the youngest rosters in the NHL is definitely something to do it after a long road trip.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think, and especially being early in the year, sometimes this is worse late in the year. Sort of all of those variables get expanded. If you got guys banged up, it just hurts a little bit more. If you got guys that are tired, they're just a little bit more lethargic maybe in the morning. When you're early in the season and you have a young team, some of these guys are used to this. Some of these guys played in college or juniors where they are traveling all the time and they have to come back and play, and they're used to that. So this is a situation where I don't know that it's necessarily the end of the world that they're in a spot like this, but certainly, I think the energy advantage might go to the Canadiens here just a little bit.
Folks, speaking of advantage, you are always getting advantage when you go to the place to buy a case. Outlet Liquor. Make sure you get there for this weekend's activities, especially for the Sunday night game.
Outlet Liquor is your place to buy a case. Stock up and save when you shop the lowest prices available every day at Outlet Liquor. You never have to wait for a sale. The more you buy, the more you save. Only at Outlet Liquor.
What's your outlet?
Gotta pay the bills, folks. Okay, speaking of which, Vinny, we're obviously looking for a big win tonight, but like Matt McConaughey said, sometimes to go forward, you have to go back. They fell on their faces in Seattle, plain and simple. They had great performances in Calgary. They had great performances in Vancouver. There was a lot of, the reason I'm asking this is not because, hey, listen, everyone has a bad game. They lose 3-2 and it's just a puck there. Even with the Jack Quinn offsides play, could have easily been 4-2. The Sabres could have gotten back into it. With that said, there was some talk about some particular plays, specifically with some effort from Casey Middleset. Some of the, like Vinny Hinostroza, I know on the 1-0 goal was specifically called out for his back check. Does that worry you? I mean, especially only a couple games into the season at all?
No, I wouldn't say that worries me specifically. Again, I don't want to just I'm doing a lot of flip flopping here. Like originally, I faded them and I said like this was definitely going to happen, and now I'm saying like, well, it wasn't. They played like they didn't know how to play NHL hockey, and now I'm saying like, wow, like there's plenty of reasons why this happened. And it's not their fault. But with all that said, I will give them the excuse that was the end of a long road trip. I think they were just sort of due for a goose egg. I think that was due. Every team, I think, I don't know if there's ever been a team that gets doesn't get shut out all year long. Like it's just bound to happen eventually. Now,
I guess the more fair framing on the Crossing Swords pregame show presented by Outlet Liquor would have been, was it more something to be worried about or just the end of a road trip? And I think you're right. It might just been the end of the road trip getting to them. A little bit of the expectations superseding for the Sabres there. But again, the expectations tonight. The funny thing is this team's 4-2 through 6 games. I think if you told any Sabres fan that they have the league's virtual worst power play through 6 games and they're 4-2, I mean, you'll take that, Vinny. And we obviously see that, this team is not going to stand pat with where it's at. We got this earlier today from Mike Harrington and obviously all the reporters at practice. But yeah, we got switch up. I guess it was Quinn and Middlestack got switched up on the units. Thoughts?
Well, as much as I'll take a 4-2 record with a bad power play. I will say those things go hand in hand sort of on each side of the spectrum there, though. Your power play being this bad is probably not sustainable. Like eventually you'll probably get it figured out. But with that said, an above 500 record is probably not sustainable when your power play is that bad. I mean, it's just like, I shouldn't say it's not impossible, but it's probably not sustainable just the way this roster's made up. You have to convert on your power play opportunities, and they have looked really, really out of it on the power play.
Yeah, I mean, there's nowhere to hide. I mean, I think it's, even the old, the traditional hockey journalists know that the power play sucks. The numbers are terrible. And the chart people, apparently, the Sabres are getting the worst opportunities when on the power play and giving up the best opportunities when on the power play, which just basically makes no sense. You flip those two things, you could be looking at a 6-0 team right now. So we'll see. Hopefully, we'll get him a little bit momentum on that. I'm sure a little bit jumbling up the lineup, especially when it's just the power play lines, I think is always a thing that, you should feel the flexibility to do when you have confidence in your roster. And speaking of confidence, the intern Vinny is moving with a lot of confidence after he starts our pick'em 2-0. He was on Seattle and the under the other night. So with that said, you have 2 points, and we don't really need a full standings yet because it's basically just Gatesy and myself at the bottom with 0 and you with 2. So with that said, Gatesy's already locked in his prediction. What is your pick'em prediction for tonight? Canadiens at Sabres, Atlantic Division matchup.
Well, this is a really interesting game because you're looking at one of the points that I want to make is that the Sabres are starting Comrie in net again after just playing in Seattle, long trip back, relatively quick turnaround.
Sleeper storyline.
Yeah, it really is. And I think that could mean a couple of different things. A, it could be a bounce back game where he was just off a little bit and now he's dialed in. Or he might be tired and they're trying to force the issue and he might give up 4. And I think that the latter is more likely. So I like the over in this one, to be honest with you. I have a feeling the Sabres will get a little bit of their goal-scoring touch back. I don't love the Canadiens on defense right now. I just think that they have some vulnerabilities there. With that said, I do like the over today. I'm going to take like a 5-3 game. And I'll be honest with you, I mentioned the travel advantage for the Canadiens. I think that might give them the edge. I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that 5th goal is an empty netter, but I am going to take the Canadiens today, 5-3. I promise I won't fade the Sabres every time. I just don't love this road trip scenario. I think they got out hot, and I think they might have they drew the short straw with the latter end of that road trip, which sounds weird, the Kraken and then a game against Canadiens. I just think this is maybe a bit of a weird stretch, and they'll get back to it later, but I'm going to take the Canadiens in the over today.
Vinny, I credit you a lot. I think you know what you're talking about. I think you're wise beyond your years. So I credit to you to that. I think 5-3 is exactly how it's going to be. You're going to see a little wear and tear from the Sabres from that West Coast trip. Maybe a back check gets missed here or there. You never know. Again, it's the fatigue of an 82-game season. 5-3 is exactly how it's going to be when the Sabres come back home and get a big dub to get the ship righted. They go to 5-2 on the year. They will win over the Montreal Canadiens and continue their streak of all their wins being by more than one goal. So the Sabres go to 5-2. My prediction, Sabres 5-3 tonight. You got Vinny, he's on Montreal on the over. You got Gatesy, he's on the Sabres. Make sure you lock those in. Tail along with us. Sabres puck drop is just minutes away. Thank you for tuning in here on the Crossing Swords pregame show. Make sure you're following along on Apple, Spotify, SoundCloud, YouTube, all those fun ones. Make sure you're following Intern Vinny at VCristiano3 and us, obviously, at Cross Swords Pod. Because here, you know, when it's game night, when it's any night, it is all about 3 words, and that is, let's go Sabres!